In a moment that has left Africa and the world stunned, Ibrahim Traoré, leader of Burkina Faso, uncovered a hidden French operative posing as a soldier within his own military unit. What followed was a gripping series of events filled with intelligence, maneuvering, tension, and Traoré's bold leadership. His next move was unpredictable, and the international reaction was nothing short of explosive. It was early morning in Ouagadougou when something unusual caught President Ibrahim Traoré's attention. During his regular routine of greeting soldiers at a military base, he noticed a young man in uniform who stood a little too straight, saluting in a way that felt off, too sharp, too polished. Ibrahim didn't react immediately, simply nodded and moved on, but deep inside his instincts flared. Having served on the front lines, he knew the rhythm of a Burkinabe soldier, the unspoken bond, the brotherhood shared in their eyes. This man, however, had none of it. Later that afternoon, Ibrahim quietly approached his chief of intelligence, Captain Ouedraogo. "Who is the new guy?" he asked. Captain Ouedraogo hesitated. "We thought he came from the southern unit, but no one really knows him." Silence hung in the air. Ibrahim stared out the window, his mind racing. A plane crossed the sky. "Verify his file discreetly," Ibrahim ordered. What had started as a routine inspection had quickly turned into something much larger, and Ibrahim knew deep down that this was no ordinary soldier. That evening, under the cover of dusk, Ibrahim gathered 3 of his most trusted officers in a back room inside the presidential compound. Captain Ouedraogo brought the file, but there was a problem. There was no file. No record in the military archives, no mention in regional rosters, no trace in the internal surveillance logs. The soldier who called himself Sergeant Tiamo was a ghost. Ibrahim sat in silence for a long moment. The room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the fan cutting through the heat. Then he spoke, his voice calm but firm. "We will not panic," he said. "We will not arrest him, not yet." The others looked shocked, but Ibrahim continued. "If this man is who I suspect, he's not alone. If we act too soon, we may never know how deep this goes." A plan was quickly formed. The next morning, the so-called Sergeant Tiamo would be sent on a controlled mission, one that would allow them to track his movements, contacts, and communications. It was risky, dangerous, but Ibrahim Traoré remained calm, his eyes steely with resolve. Behind that quiet gaze was something far stronger than fear, a deep, burning need to protect his country without bloodshed. By mid-morning the following day, Sergeant Tiamo was sent on a staged mission, a security check along the edge of a crowded marketplace. Ibrahim watched from a nearby rooftop, dressed in plain clothes and shielded by shadows, accompanied by 2 plainclothes guards. He wasn't there to fight. He was there to listen. As the sergeant moved through the market, Ibrahim's device crackled in his ear. The radio transmission was too quiet for anyone else to hear, but not for Ibrahim's team. "Confirm intel on Traoré's location. Pete, confirm visual on the target." The voice wasn't speaking in any local dialect. It was pure Parisian. French, clean and coded. Ibrahim's heart clenched. This wasn't just espionage, it was an international breach. At that moment, a child bumped into the fake sergeant and dropped a basket of mangoes. The man didn't flinch, but Ibrahim noticed something chilling. The sergeant instinctively reached for something beneath his uniform, his firearm. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't confusion. This was a trained foreign agent, and now the president was watching him live. The world would never be the same after what came next. That evening, Ibrahim met with his inner circle in a small, unmarked room, beneath the presidential quarters. The air smelled of bitter coffee. Captain Ouedraogo's voice trembled as he played the recording again. "Confirm intel on Traoré's location." There was no doubt anymore. The room sat in stunned silence. One general stood up, fists clenched. "Give the order. We'll take him down tonight." But Ibrahim raised his hand gently. "No," he said, his voice calm but resolute. "Everyone turn around. We don't just have a spy. We have a message. They think we're not watching. They think we are weak." He leaned forward, his eyes hardening with clarity. Burkina Faso is not a playground for foreign powers anymore. Then Ibrahim gave his next instruction, which shocked everyone. Let him roam. Feed him what we want him to believe, but make sure he never sees the real picture. Why? Because Ibrahim didn't just want one spy. He wanted the entire network. The next 24 hours would test his promise to his people like never before. The French embassy in Ouagadougou was unusually quiet that morning. Inside, a nervous agent whispered into a secured line. He's not reacting. He's waiting. Oh, it's strange. On the other end, a cold voice replied, then provoke him. Meanwhile, Ibrahim received word that Sergeant Tiamo had sent encrypted messages throughout the night. One of them contained GPS coordinates for the presidential convoy's route. Scheduled for the next day, they were planning something. Yet Ibrahim's response shocked even his intelligence chief. Change the route. Leak the old one. You want them to strike an empty car? Captain Ouedraogo asked. No, Ibrahim replied. I want them to believe they did. Let's see how far they go. The game was set. What followed would be nothing short of explosive. Ibrahim Traoré's strategic mind, calm, under pressure. It's not only protecting his country, it was sending a message to the world. Burkina Faso was no longer to be underestimated. In a moment that stunned both Africa and the world, Ibrahim Traoré, the leader of Burkina Faso, uncovered a hidden French operative posing as a soldier within his own military ranks. What followed was a thrilling sequence of events marked by intelligence operations, high-stakes maneuvering, and Traoré's unparalleled leadership. His next move, a daring and unexpected one, would change everything, sending shockwaves across the globe. It all began early one morning in Ouagadougou, as President Ibrahim Traoré conducted his daily rounds at a military base. He noticed something peculiar, a young man in uniform standing a bit too stiffly, saluting in a manner that didn't seem quite right. His posture was too perfect, too polished. Ibrahim didn't react immediately. He simply acknowledged the soldier with a nod and continued his rounds. But inside, something in his gut told him that this soldier was no ordinary man. His instincts, flared, honed by years of service in the field. Later that day, Ibrahim quietly asked his chief of intelligence, Captain Ouedraogo, who is the new guy? Captain Ouedraogo responded cautiously, we thought he came from the southern unit. No one seems to know him. There was an unsettling silence. Ibrahim looked out of the window. A plane flew across the sky. Verify his file discreetly, Ibrahim said, his tone calm but resolute. Deep down, he knew that the soldier he had just observed was no regular recruit, but something much more sinister. That evening, Ibrahim called together his most trusted officers for a secret meeting. Inside a nondescript room at the presidential compound, Captain Ouedraogo handed over the soldier's file only to discover that no file existed. No records, no roster, no history of the soldier named Sergeant Tiamo. The man was a ghost. Ibrahim sat silently for what felt like an eternity. The tension in the room was palpable. Finally, he broke the silence. We will not panic, he said. We will not arrest him, at least. Not yet. His officers looked at him, bewildered. But Ibrahim continued, his voice steady and unwavering. If this man is who I suspect, he is not alone. If we act too soon, we risk losing the entire network. The plan was set in motion. The following day, the mysterious Sergeant Tiamo would be sent on a controlled mission, a staged security check that would allow them to track his movements and see where he went. Ibrahim, ever the strategist, remained calm as always. This mission wasn't about rushing to conclusions. It was about gathering information and waiting for the right moment. By mid-morning the next day, the sergeant was on his mission. Ibrahim watched discreetly from a nearby rooftop, dressed in plain clothes and accompanied by 2 guards. He wasn't there to confront the soldier directly. He was there to observe. As Tiamo moved through a busy marketplace, Ibrahim's team secretly listened in on his radio communications through a device embedded in his vest. Confirm intel on Traoré's location. Repeat, confirm visual on the target. The voice coming through the transmission was unmistakable, pure Parisian French, coded and clean. Ibrahim's heart sank. This was no simple spy. This was an international breach. At that moment, something unsettling happened. A child accidentally bumped into the so-called sergeant, dropping a basket of mangoes. Tiamo didn't even flinch. But Ibrahim noticed something chilling. The soldier instinctively reached for a weapon hidden beneath his uniform. This wasn't an accident. This was a foreign agent trained, cold, and dangerous. The game had changed. That evening, Ibrahim met with his inner circle once again. The weight of the situation hung in the air. Captain Ouedraogo replayed the intercepted transmission, confirm intel on Traoré's location. It was clear no Sergeant Tiamo was part of a much larger conspiracy. One of the generals stood up, fists clenched, ready to take action. Give the order. Let's take him down tonight, the general urged. But Ibrahim raised his hand calmly. No, he said. We don't just have a spy. We have a message. They think we're weak, that we're not paying attention. They were wrong. Turning to his aides, Ibrahim spoke with quiet authority. Let him move freely. Feed him the intel we want him to see, but make sure he never pieces together the full puzzle. Captain Ibrahim Traoré wasn't after a single spy. He was after the entire network, the shadowy machinery of foreign influence that had quietly infiltrated his country. The trap had been set. Now the waiting began. By morning, the French operative codenamed Jean-Luc was already dancing. On the strings Ibrahim had pulled. Lured by a falsified military document, he moved toward a designated safe house. Every step was tracked. Is he headed to the safe house? Whispered Captain Ouedraogo. Yes, Ibrahim replied calmly, his gaze focused and sharp. But he's not our true enemy. He's a tool. The real enemy hides behind a flag. A discreet convoy followed Jean-Luc's trail. Hidden surveillance eyes monitored the safe house, an old, crumbling warehouse on the outskirts of Babo Dioulasso. To an outsider, it was just a forgotten ruin. But inside, things were anything but abandoned. Jean-Luc entered and met two civilians. One bore a scar down his jaw, the other held a sleek, black briefcase. The plan stays the same, the scarred man growled. Disrupt communications, fabricate orders, create enough chaos, and the West will be forced to intervene. Jean-Luc frowned. But he's not reacting. It's not how they expected. The reply came with a clenched fist slamming into the table. Then provoke him. Back in Ouagadougou, Ibrahim sat silently, listening to the wiretap through an earpiece. Every word confirmed his suspicions. But he stayed composed. Pull back, he instructed his team softly. It's not time yet. This mission wasn't about revenge. It was about the soul of a nation. Outside the safe house, an old veteran watched from the shadows. He sent a quiet message to his son. Tell the president they are not alone. That night, in a plain studio inside an intelligence outpost, Ibrahim recorded a secret address. No banners. No titles. Just a man and a microphone, my fellow. Burkina, he began. They say I've vanished. Silenced. But I speak to you now not as a ghost, but as your son. The speech didn't air on state media. Instead, it traveled through encrypted channels to village elders and local leaders. Radios crackled in rural huts, and phones lit up in busy cafes as his voice spread in whispers across the nation. We are being watched, Ibrahim said. Those who pretend to help us are planting snakes in our homes. But this land is sacred. No gun, no lie, no foreign hand will break us. His words ignited something. Hope spread, quietly but powerfully. The following day, revelations emerged. Ibrahim had discovered that Sergeant Tiamo, the suspicious soldier, had no service records. He was a phantom, a foreign agent embedded in the ranks. The implications were staggering. At a midnight strategy meeting, Ibrahim stood at the head of the table, his closest commanders silent with shock. This is not panic time, he told them. It's a strategy time. He orchestrated a covert mission for the fake soldier to lead. Meanwhile, Ibrahim, disguised in civilian clothes, watched from the shadows. His intelligence teams tapped into communications. Confirmation came. The operative was relaying information to Paris. That evening, alone in his office, Ibrahim sat in heavy silence. He had heard enough. No more silence, he said aloud. The world must know. Next morning, a press conference was called. Cameras from around the world focused on the small podium. The truth, Ibrahim began, is this. A foreign agent infiltrated our military, sent by those who claim to be allies. This betrayal will not be tolerated. This is a warning. Burkina Faso will not be anyone's pawn. The room froze. The world listened. Across the globe, headlines erupted. France issued a furious condemnation. Other nations joined the chorus, calling for sanctions and diplomatic reviews, but inside Burkina Faso, the opposite occurred. The people poured into the streets, waving flags, chanting Ibrahim's name. Their leader had done what many never dared. He had stood up to giants. From the balcony of his palace, Ibrahim watched the massive crowds below. Finally see it, he whispered. Inside the war room, Captain Amadou entered. The people are with you, he said, but the world is turning against us. I knew this day would come, Ibrahim replied. We're in a fight for our future. At a military assembly that night, he addressed his commanders with steel in his voice. Burkina Faso will remain sovereign. No more strings. No more foreign puppeteers. We must chart our own path, even if the world disapproves. The room was tense, but Ibrahim's words carried the weight of truth. His resolve inspired something deeper than loyalty, inspired purpose. We've already lost too much to silence and interference, he said. Now is the time to reclaim it all. Ibrahim Traoré had done more than expose a spy, he had unmasked a system. And in doing so, he had ignited a national awakening. The world was watching, but Burkina Faso was awakening. Had sparked wasn't built on weapons, it was built on courage. This was no longer just a geopolitical crisis. This was history in motion, and history would remember his name. Let them come. We will stand firm. He knew the path ahead would be fraught with danger. His decision had already set the world on fire, and now he had to navigate through the flames. Every move he made could either bring Burkina Faso closer to victory or lead to its downfall. The next morning, the weight of the world seemed to press on Ibrahim's shoulders. The discovery of the French operative had turned his country into a global focal point. It wasn't just a question of military security anymore. It was a matter of sovereignty, independence, and national pride. The pressure to act was overwhelming. But Ibrahim knew that the stakes were higher than they had ever been. In a dimly lit room, Ibrahim gathered his inner circle, trusted officers, intelligence agents, and advisors. They knew this moment would define their nation's future. I've thought long and hard, Ibrahim said, his voice calm but resolute. We cannot let this go.
No.
This isn't just about the operative. It's about Burkina Faso's sovereignty. The room was thick with tension. Ibrahim's calm demeanor was unsettling, yet it was clear to all that his decision was made.
We will.
We will confront the French government directly. We will expose the operative's identity and his actions, he declared. The risk was enormous. Exposing the French agent could spark international retaliation, but Ibrahim was determined. He would make Burkina Faso's stance known to the world. This was no longer just a diplomatic issue. It was a fight for his nation's dignity. As Ibrahim's announcement hit the international press, the world reacted with shock. France condemned Burkina Faso's actions, accusing the country of jeopardizing international peace. Other Western powers quickly joined in, calling for sanctions and diplomatic isolation. But in Burkina Faso, the streets erupted in celebration. The people were rallying behind Ibrahim, holding up signs that read "Sovereignty above all," chanting his name in unison. The country had a leader who wasn't afraid to stand up to foreign manipulation, and the people were proud. As tensions mounted, Ibrahim knew that the path he had chosen was filled with peril. Would Burkina Faso face the wrath of sanctions, isolation, and economic hardship, or would they emerge as a symbol of resistance for other nations seeking to break free from foreign influence? The international leaders had voiced their opposition, but Ibrahim had one final, unexpected move in mind. Rather than escalating the conflict, Ibrahim decided to call for diplomacy, invited a delegation of international leaders, including French diplomats, to a summit in Ouagadougou. The world was stunned as Ibrahim, rather than engaging in military action, chose to lay out the facts exposing the presence of the French operative, the breach of trust, and the need for Burkina Faso to be respected. The summit was tense. World leaders sat in silence as Ibrahim calmly but powerfully addressed them. He demanded respect for Burkina Faso's autonomy and sovereignty. The French delegation, visibly shaken, had underestimated this young, unyielding leader. Ibrahim's ability to navigate this delicate situation with poise and diplomacy turned the tables. This summit was not about war, but about finally addressing Africa's right to self-determination. By the end of the summit, Burkina Faso was no longer seen as a weak nation to be exploited, but as a proud country that had taken charge of its own destiny. Ibrahim Traoré had emerged as a leader who could stand firm in the face of international pressure, advocating not only for Burkina Faso, but for all of Africa. The news reverberated across the globe. Burkina Faso had not only exposed a foreign spy, but had also made an important statement about sovereignty, dignity, and the power of African nations to stand on their own. Ibrahim Traoré's leadership had turned what could have been a disaster into a triumph of diplomacy, courage, and self-respect. Ibrahim's bold stance changed the trajectory of Burkina Faso's future, and his message was heard across the world. Africa was no longer willing to sit in the shadows of foreign influence. Through courage, intelligence, and a deep commitment to his people, Ibrahim had shown the world what true leadership looked like.